Good evening, Sunday evening, draft weekend evening. We're almost on to the week, and the 49ers have 22 more players than they did at the start of this weekend. So we have to get through all of them, and I know that so many of you are asking about the undrafted free agents because there's not as much press about them, and I get it. You kind of rely on sources like me to go a little bit more in depth into the UDFA signings. So that's exactly what I'm going to do this evening, give you a little Sunday evening treat. Now, I was thinking, the blazer only comes out for games and for the draft, obviously. And I sat down and I just had the collared shirt on after dinner. And I was about to start this live. And yes, I was a few minutes late. I'm not going to apologize for that, but I'm going to give you the reason. I said, the undrafted free agents, they deserve the blazer too. They deserve the full blazer treatment, the full formality, because these guys have just made an NFL roster, and that's a big deal. I don't care if they don't make the 53-man roster. And, hey, there's a good chance that one of these guys will make it, at least one out of a class of 13. But still, it's a huge deal to come out of college and sign with an NFL team. I mean, that's a lifelong dream for a lot of these players. And I think it's time that we normalize undrafted free agent signings and covering them as heavily as we cover the 7 rounds of the draft. Because, we give so much detail to the 7 rounds of the draft, even to guys picked in the 6th and 7th rounds. And then the guys that sign right away that don't hear their name called, especially if you're comparing them to a 7th rounder, there can be just as much of a chance that this guy makes an impact at the NFL level. So I think to accurately cover this, to accurately cover the 49ers offseason, because even if some of these players don't make the 53, they're going to contribute to these practices. They're going to be big parts of this football team and its preparation moving forward. I think you have to cover the whole picture. And the teams, they always run their press conference right after round 7 ends. And yesterday, John Lynch was literally sitting there in the press conference. He was doing a great job answering the questions. I'm not complaining, but I'm just illustrating how important this undrafted free agent process is to teams. John was sitting there up on the podium and he had his phone. He was on his phone. He was looking at updates from the UDFA signings because he had to come downstairs for the press conference right upstairs across the way in the 49ers draft room. The phones were ringing. They were working the phones. They were calling guys. They were making these signings. They're finalizing it. And John Lynch obviously was still focused on that, as he should have been, because it's a big deal. It's an extension of the draft. So the day doesn't end at the end of round 7. The day continues, and then everybody goes and gets drinks after the undrafted free agent class has been signed. So the 49ers, they picked up 13 of these guys. They have 89 players now officially on their 90-man roster. So there's still one open slot. And the rookie minicamp is going to be coming up, not this weekend coming up, but the next. And at the rookie minicamp, we'll get to meet all of these undrafted free agents for the first time, plus the 9 draftees. And the 49ers will also invite some rookies on a tryout basis, so rookies without a contract. Now, you could do the math easily. As it stands right now, the 49ers have one open roster spot, 89 of 90. So they would have to cut somebody to be able to sign more than one rookie that tries out at minicamp coming up in 2 weeks. But that's still a little far away. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the tryout players today. We're going to talk about the 13 of the 49ers signed. So welcome to the show. If you're just coming into the room, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. There's already been a ton of content that I pumped out, both on The Athletic and on here throughout today. Tomorrow morning, the big depth chart comes out. My first 53-man roster projection comes out on The Athletic. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I had a tough time just kind of figuring out, okay, who's on the outside looking in, who's going to be on that 53-man roster. And I'll tell you what, that's good news for the 49ers. That should excite both the team and fans, that they have depth across the board. That's really key. They have all but really one position is considerably deep, and I'll mention that position as we go through this breakdown of undrafted free agents. But the 49ers have excelled through this regime at building strength and building talent at the margins of the roster. Oftentimes, and hey, they've given out more positional record contracts than any other team in NFL since Lynch and Shanahan took over. But the reason the Niners have made 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl over the past 3 seasons after Lynch and Shanahan took over a franchise that was in total shambles following Jim Tom Sula and Chip Kelly and Trent Baalke and all of that. The reason that they've been able to rebuild this into what seems like a consistent winner or a consistent contender is through building at the margins. Their scouting department has been phenomenal. And round 5, we all talk about the round 5 success in the draft. Obviously, George Kittle was found in the 5th round, but DJ Jones was found in the 6th round. Jawan Jennings was a 7th rounder, but you look at the undrafted free agents that the 49ers have brought in. Kendrick Bourne got that off on a good start, got that off on the right foot back in 2017, and he turned that in and parlayed that into a multi-million-dollar contract with the Patriots. It all goes to show you that the scouting department and the process that the 49ers have behind the scenes to be able to not only unearth, but also properly evaluate players who may not be as high on other teams' radar is sound. And they have objectively turned around a team that was, 2-14 in 2016 into a team that, again, has been to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl over the past 3 years. So why don't we take a look at this year's crop of undrafted free agents, which might be the most interesting one so far in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch regime. And, it's one of those crazy situations where the 49ers are – I may have some news for you guys in a little bit. This is interesting. Something just popped across my screen. I don't know if I'm allowed to share it yet, so you guys can stay tuned. I have to check to see. Maybe it's just 1 second. 1 second. I have to keep it quiet for now. All right, I can't quite share it, but I'm going to share it at some point. It'll be good stuff, but just got a text message. Hate to hold you guys on a cliffhanger, but have to keep sources at this point. Anyway, we're going through the undrafted free agents for the 49ers, and I thought this was the most interesting UDFA class. And a lot of people were like, oh, well, this may not be the most interesting UDFA class because the roster already is strong. But they had room on the 90-man to sign a lot of these guys. They had room to sign 14 of them, and they signed 13 of them. And it ended up being an interesting collection of talent, not just for the case of 2022, but for looking forward to 2023. Think of Aziz Al Shire. He started as an undrafted free agent, right? And he parlayed that into a spot on the football team that is valued as a restricted free agent this year. They put the 2nd round tender on him. And now, obviously, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2023. Well, the 49ers are going to have to find the next Aziz Al Shire, or they're going to have to pay Aziz Al Shire. They're going to, hit a crossroads at that situation. They're also going to have to decide whether or not to pay Dre Greenlaw next year. So in all likelihood, you only pay one of those two guys. Well, you better find somebody to start grooming to be ready for that linebacker position, because it's unlikely that you're going to be able to pay everybody once they hit unrestricted free agency. And that's what the UDFA market means to me. I think that it's really big, especially for a roster that's matured like the 49ers, to plant seeds, to utilize that practice squad, because it's not just about the 53. The practice squad is bigger than it used to be now, and use that practice squad as a farm system of sorts to prepare some of these guys who may not have been good enough or may not have been ready enough to be drafted this year, but to prepare them to take over like Aziz Al Shire down the road and to really launch their NFL careers. So without further ado, we're ready to start now. No more text messages. That's good. And let's get this thing rolling. First off, defensive back Quantrezz Knight out of UCLA. This guy's a sturdy, physical defender that I think might be able to give the 49ers some safety reps, maybe some nickel reps. The problem here was that he didn't run all too fast. He ran a 4.6, and if you compare him to Samuel Womack, that's the nickelback the 49ers picked in the 5th round, he's slower, undoubtedly. Womack is not as thick as Quantrezz Knight, who's really, he's a tank out there. He's got, he plays physically because of it. I'm not saying that Womack doesn't, but Quantrezz Knight's all over the field, kind of a joker defensively for UCLA. Really impressive player as far as the instincts go. But again, the reason that he probably wasn't drafted was because he ran a 4.6 and not a 4.4 like Samuel Womack. But Quantrezz was a playmaker, played at Kent State, actually started his career at Maryland. Then you had that whole DJ Durkin fiasco over at Maryland. It was a big scandal, right? So you saw a lot of guys transferred to Kent State, and then finished up his career at UCLA under Chip Kelly, who I just mentioned. And Quantrezz, I mean, he's a capable player, and you just have to wonder where he might fit in for the 49ers. But versatile defensive backs shouldn't be taken for granted. I'm going to pop open the depth chart here, and we could look at the depth chart as we go through. Backs shouldn't be taken for granted. As we go through every position group, sorry, that was my own YouTube playing in the background, but we should go through every position group here and look at the depth chart to see, as we list the UDFAs, to see where they might fit. But Quantrezz, right here, 90-man roster. Let's share this with you guys. I have to remove one of these and share another one. Okay, here we go. If you want to follow along to this, by the way, that's the 49ers depth chart. Check out the chat section. You could follow along right there. It's a Google Doc that's open to everybody. All right, so we're going to zoom down over to the defensive back portion and see where Quantrezz Knight is. So you have a dividing line right here in the middle. Left of the line are my projections to make the 53-man roster. Right of the line, that's 90-man roster guys on the practice squad or on the bubble. Blue highlights mean rookie. Quantrezz Knight is right here, right in the middle. It's a lot easier, of course, if you're following along on your own Google Doc while you watch this, but I'm sure you could also see it on the screen. So Quantrezz, outside looking in, you look at the safeties and the defensive backs that the 49ers have. Obviously, you have Jimmy Ward, you have George Odom, Talanoa Hufanga at safety, Tarvarius Moore in red because he's coming off the Achilles. Now, say Tarvarius Moore's not ready or somebody else gets hurt, all of a sudden you need another safety. Is Quantrezz a safety? Is he a nickelback? Well, a lot of these defensive positions are hybridized now. And look, you got Samuel Womack and Tariq Castro-Fields obviously making the team. Those are draft picks for the 49ers this year. I think they have better physical measurements than Quantrezz Knight. But still, those guys aren't on the most solid ground. They still have to prove themselves at the NFL level. It's not like they're first-round draft picks. So although there is competition here, there is an opportunity for somebody like Quantrezz Knight. And even if he doesn't make that 53-man roster, there are obviously more spots on the practice squad. So for a player like him, you can go ahead and type in his YouTube highlights right now. Just a solid physical player, has a nose for the football, brings a passion to the game. There's a cool video of him at some kind of family gathering where he announced that he was signing with the 49ers, and he seemed really excited about it. And I think that the 49ers, like many teams who wanted Quantrezz Knight at undrafted free agency, are happy that they have somebody that they can work with at multiple spots. And hey, if you're going to make the team from this point in this highly competitive league on a highly competitive roster, you better be a jack of all trades, especially in the 49ers secondary, because they do like that positional versatility. All right, moving forward, I'll pop open that depth chart as we need it. Linebacker Jeremiah Gemmell from North Carolina. High intangible kind of guy. They nicknamed him the General at North Carolina because he was such a leader on the field. So if you know football, it's that meritocracy. It's a game of respect. You often hear Fred Warner talking about how his main driver, his main motivation, it's not the money, it's the respect from his peers. And, I think in any alpha kind of sport, it's important that you put yourself in that mindset to perform at the highest possible level. If you're just sitting there in a sport like football, it's inherently dangerous where you have to put your body on the line and all you're thinking about is money. Well, you're not going to be really, I think, in warrior mode, ready to battle, especially linebackers, a position where you're throwing your body around. There are going to be a lot of bruises. There's going to be a lot of contact. Somebody who's called the General, I think that's somebody who understands the notion of respect on the field, who is fighting for the respect of his fellow teammates, his fellow men, and, is made up of some of the intangibles that the 49ers look for, then they search for to comprise their locker room. I always go back to the movie Gladiator, right? Everybody calls Maximus General. He's officially a general of the Roman legion. But it's a term of respect. It's a term of endearment. So when I heard they called Jeremiah Gemmell the general at North Carolina, I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I mean, you're getting, a guy that everybody on a D1 college team looked up to and called the general. So you have to have a work ethic to do that. You have to show up in big moments to do that. And you have to be an effective player to do that. Now, Gemmell didn't blow anybody away with any of his athletic testing. Therefore, he didn't get drafted. But the he's been called the general by his teammates in North Carolina. And the 49ers like the tape enough to bring him in as an undrafted free agent. I mentioned Aziz Al Shire and Dre Greenlaw a little bit earlier. Both of those players are going to be unrestricted free agents come this next offseason. So the 49ers, if they don't sign both of them, which is unlikely, there's going to be room for a linebacker, and there may be room for an instinctual linebacker like Jeremiah Gemmell if he can get a hold of how the NFL works on the practice squad for a year. He has his foot in the door. Maybe, it may take some time, but the 49ers may be willing to give him some time because they're going to need to reload at that linebacker position. All right, on to Tay Martin, Oklahoma State receiver who actually started his career at Washington State. I think Mike Leach was probably still the coach back then when he started at Washington State. But he's 6'1", runs a 4.6, not all too fast. Quick 3-cone. He almost broke 7 seconds on the 3-cone, which is quick. But he dropped the ball way too much this past season. 10 drops for Tay Martin. So think Kendrick Bourne coming out of college, out of Eastern Washington. Kendrick Bourne, who played on that red field at Eastern Washington. He was teammates with Cooper Kupp, which is still crazy to me. Remember, the most prolific wide receiving duo in college football history by a mile, by so much, was Cooper Kupp and Kendrick Bourne back in 2016. They set all kinds of records at Eastern Washington throughout their careers. They set all kinds of records at Eastern Washington. Anyway, Tay Martin, not a FCS product from Eastern Washington. He went to Washington State, and then he went to Oklahoma State, although I will say that Washington State is really close to Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington is in this town called Cheney, right outside of Spokane, Cheney, Washington, and Washington State is in Pullman. So you probably have about an hour, maybe an hour and a half between those two towns, both on the opposite side of the state as the Seahawks. Anyway, Tay Martin, his route running is his strength because he's got good quickness. He really does. The 3-cone was solid. That's why I compare him to Kendrick Bourne. I mean, coming out in 2017, 49ers picked up 2 of the top 5 3-cone performers at the wide receiver position from the NFL Combine, and that was Kendrick Bourne and Trent Taylor. So both of those guys have the short area quickness. I think Tay Martin has some short area quickness as well, but he's far from a finished product. Like Kendrick Bourne, he's going to have to get a lot stronger. Like Kendrick Bourne, he's going to have to work on the drops, and he's dealing with a really, really crowded wide receiver room. I could pop open the depth chart again, but if we look at the 49ers wide receiver room, after picking up Danny Gray, well, are they going to carry 6 or are they going to carry 7? Right now, right here on the depth chart, I have the 49ers with 7 in the wide receiver room. I could take one off, though, because I don't think that both Marcus Johnson and Malik Turner will make it. But you have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ray McLeod obviously will make the team. Danny Gray, Kyle Shanahan thinks he was one of the fastest players in the draft. And then Marcus Johnson and Malik Turner. Malik Turner is the former Seahawk and the former Eagle. He scored a touchdown against the Eagles, former Seahawk and the former Cowboy. Nice 6'2" target. Physical receiver who could throw his body around. I think he might be the number 6 receiver for the 49ers right now if the 53-man roster cut down was today. But he can be displaced. I only see 5 general locks there, and the 49ers can take 6 for sure, maybe even 7 receivers. So there's every single incentive for Tay Martin to try to make this football team. Same thing for Taysir Mack out of Pitt. Similar measurables to Tay Martin, maybe a little bit faster, runs like a 4.5, 6.40, so he's not a burner. He had a shortened season, though, due to injury at Pitt. He was catching balls there from Kenny Pickett, who was the only quarterback taken in the first round of the NFL draft this year. So maybe it was Mack who was making Pickett look good during this past draft. So earlier I talked about Jeremiah Gemmell, the high intangible linebacker. Well, the 49ers signed another linebacker as part of this UDFA class, and that was Segun Olubi out of San Diego State. Now, whereas Gemmell didn't have great measurables, just a solid intangible kind of guy, Olubi ran a 4.4440 at his pro day. And that's fast for a linebacker. He checks in at about 220, so he's on the lighter end. And I know the 49ers have gone lighter at linebacker with a lot of converted safeties. And then they tried to swing the pendulum back a bit by signing Warren Burks, who's more of a pure linebacker, Vanderbilt product, who played for the Packers for the past 3 years. And obviously now is a 49er, kind of a special teams ace. But again, it's the same theme as with Jeremiah Gemmell, with Olubi. The 49ers need to start stashing for the future, the linebacker position. So back to the depth chart. We'll take a look at it right now. Pop it open on the screen. Linebacker position, highlighted right here: Warner, Greenlaw, Shire, Burks, Flanagan, Fowles. And then you have Gemmell, Curtis Robinson, who's a Stanford product. And right there, Olubi as stashed depth. And stashed depth might make an expanded practice squad. And again, I'll bring back Aziz Al Shire. He started his career as an undrafted free agent. He started his career as somebody who had a lot of potential coming out of college. Went to school down there in Florida, and Florida International for Aziz Al Shire. And he had something like 140 tackles one of the seasons. None of these two linebackers the 49ers signed this year have stats that pop off the screen like Aziz Al Shire's. But he bided his time, and he found his way onto the roster, and now he's making $4 million this season. So congratulations, Aziz Al Shire, and, Segun Olubi and Jeremiah Gemmell. Those are two players that can follow his path, follow in his footsteps. And, there may not be an opportunity now on this roster, but there can be in the future. And it's any good organization is constantly moving gears, shifting gears to be ready for the future. All right, safety Leon O'Neal out of Texas A&M. There's a video going around of Ty Davis Price, the 49ers running back picked in the 3rd round, trucking somebody from Texas A&M. And that just so happens to be what was back then Ty Davis Price's future 49ers teammate and now his current 49ers teammate, Leon O'Neal. I know a lot of people are excited about Leon O'Neal because he's a thumper. He's a bit of a throwback. He hits. He's not afraid to throw his body into contact. And you like guys like that to set a tone for you physically. You don't want guys who are cowering away from tackles, who are cowering away from laying some wood in the middle of the field. But O'Neal didn't run well. I mean, and that's a big reason why he fell out of the draft and why he was an undrafted free agent. That 4.7 speed is going to be tough. Now, I know the 49ers picked Talanoa Hufanga last year at what, I think it might have been 4.7 as well. So he wasn't fast, 4.6 or 4.7, but it's still a liability for Hufanga. We're still sitting here talking about Hufanga's, potential struggles in coverage if he takes that number 2 safety role behind Jimmy Ward. We know Hufanga is very valuable to the 49ers in special teams. We know that he's got great instincts. He's good in the box. But we still wonder at that safety position, do the 49ers want some more speed? And they picked up George Odom, free agent from Indianapolis. They'll have speed back with Tarvarius Moore, assuming that he recovers successfully from his Achilles tear. But, everybody wants speed at the safety position to make sure that you can cover downfield, and it's mandatory. And my worry with Leon O'Neal is that speed might not be there. Now, I could play the clip of him getting trucked by Ty Davis Price. You could look it up yourself. It's on the internet. I don't want to put Leon O'Neal on blast. I'm not one of those guys that plays one-off clips of a player looking bad without any context. So I'm not going to do it here. But it was just some 49ers violence that I saw come across Twitter yesterday with Ty Davis Price hitting Leon O'Neal. And hey, tackling and contact, even though Leon O'Neal didn't look good on that play. I mean, Ty Davis Price ran at 230 pounds for LSU last year. Give him some credit. I think he's going to run well for the 49ers because he's not 230 anymore, but probably picked up a little bit of speed because of that. And the 49ers need a downhill inside zone kind of guy, and they have it in Ty Davis Price. I don't think there's too much shame in the way that he truck sticked O'Neal. But my main thing about O'Neal is I just worry about the 40. I really do worry that his play speed is not going to be what the 49ers need for coverage on the back end. And I already illustrated it, with Quantrezz Knight when we looked at the depth chart. It's competitive in the secondary. The 49ers wanted to make it competitive, and through their draft picks, through Tariq Castro-Fields through Samuel Womack, that they've made it very competitive. In fact, I mean, if you go back to the roster here, look at the secondary and, have this open while I'm talking. I have the link in the chat section. I have Diamador Lenore currently on the outside looking in. I have Darquez Denard on the outside looking in if the season started today, because there's a limit. 53 is the limit. So, now you're talking about Leon O'Neal. Can he make the team? Can he not make the team? Well, I can't carry everybody on the team. The 49ers won't be able to carry everybody on the team. So he'll have a chance to prove himself, but I'm just saying why he wasn't drafted and why, it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be an uphill battle for all these guys because they're undrafted free agents. 49ers signed another North Carolina prospect. It seemed like the area scout out there in North Carolina got a good share of work in. Jeremiah Gemmell, the linebacker, and the tight end, Garrett Walston. 241, runs a 4.7, maybe 4.8, I think a 4.7, 6'4". He's solid at all phases of the game. He's a decent blocker. He's got decent hands. The one thing for Garrett Walston that's really working in his favor is that the 49ers tight end room is that one position group that, to me, is a little bit thin. And you look at it here right in the middle of the screen, and I could even make this bigger so you can see it. I'll highlight the tight end room. You've got Kittle, you've got Werner, you've got Dwelly, and then past that on the side of the roster that I don't have making the team right now, you have Tanner Hudson, former wide receiver Jordan Matthews, and then there's Garrett Walston. I mean, that's not a tall task to beat out Jordan Matthews, who was struggling to block as a tight end last year. In preseason, he didn't make the roster as a tight end after his position switch. And Tanner Hudson also hasn't really moved the needle for the 49ers yet. Ross Dwelly fell out of favor last year. So was Kittle and Werner. And I think the 49ers want a little bit more than Werner has given them in the past game. Well, that means there's only Kittle. And as a player who has a 100% locked in safe spot. So if Garrett Walston shows up at an NFL camp and knocks everybody's socks off, hell yes, he can make the football team. It may not look like much to people right now, but I see an opening at tight end for a player like Garrett Walston. So just keep that in mind as we go through this roster. All right, next one. Shout out to Fresno State, Kevin Atkins, versatile defensive tackle type who moved people in Mountain West Conference play. And he even took some 5 technique snaps at the, at a defensive end spot. So Kevin Atkins, he's not short, he's not 6 feet, 305 pounds. He's a good 314, maybe to 320. And he's 6'3" or 6'4". So he's got a little bit of a taller frame, which has meant that he's been able to take some of those defensive end reps in college. I don't think it's going to happen in the pros, and it's going to be tough to make an extremely crowded 49ers roster, but you never know. And last year they brought in Darian Daniels, right? And they had Darian Daniels, I think, for 2 seasons prior to this. And he was the nose tackle who they really wanted to develop into somebody who might be able to succeed. DJ Jones didn't work out. Unfortunately for the 49ers, Darian Daniels, and unfortunately for Darian Daniels, he got hurt dancing at practice last year. It didn't look good. He was dancing during stretches of practice and walked off, limped, and we never saw him again. So Darian Daniels no longer on the 49ers roster. Maybe their developmental defensive tackle at this point. They picked up Kalia Davis. That's a 6th rounder. I made a whole separate video about him about 2 or 3 hours ago. So go check that out. By the way, hit the like button, subscribe if you're watching right now. But Kevin Atkins, Fresno State, hometown area. Shout out to the 559. Go Bulldogs. He's going to be in that defensive tackle spot. All right, on to Taylor Hawkins, safety out of San Diego State. He was a college corner for the Aztecs, but 4.5 speed. He's a bit slower already with that 4.5 speed than the 2 defensive back prospects of the 49ers drafted in Samuel Womack and Tariq Castro-Fields. Those are both 4.3 high guys, 4.4 guys. So I think with Hawkins, you're looking at more of a safety type body, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. And obviously the 49ers have probably more of a need for safety depth than they do for cornerback depth. Sam Schluter out of Minnesota, big 6'6" frame. He's a solid pass protector, but he's a bit slow. Big Ten left tackle, Didn't miss a single game over his 4-year career for the Golden Gophers. You like the length, arm length too. You like the size at 6'6". But I think the 49ers have historically, under Shanahan, looked for tackles who could move a little bit better than Schluter. So I don't think he has a very high chance of making the team. But, maybe there's something they really, really liked about his pass protection. And I thought he was solid in that form of the game and in some of the limited tape that I've watched from Sam Schluter. And given that, I mean, who knows? Moving forward, Mike McGlinchey is about to enter his 5th-year option season. Trent Williams is not getting any younger. It's good. It's a good idea to have a pure tackle developing on the practice squad, or at least give him a chance to get onto that practice squad. And I think that's what the 49ers are looking at with Sam Schluter. All right, running back Cyrus Habibi Lekio out of Boise State, Oregon running back who transferred to Boise. By the way, Boise is a super underrated city. I'm a big fan of Boise. So my best friend, his name is Colton. He went to lineman college, not like O or D lineman college. He like lineman college as far as like climbing up on power lines and risking electrocution and doing a bunch of just crazy shit. He just got hired in Vernon, which is right outside of downtown LA. And he said that they're working with live power lines and that there's just guys talking shit to each other on the job the whole time. It sounds like really, really manly work. Let's just put it that way. Well, he was at lineman college in Meridian, Idaho, which is just outside of Boise. So I went to visit him a couple times in 2021. And I just did a lot of work. Like that was before I was doing really extensive YouTube stuff, but a lot of my athletic articles about Trey Lance and the pre-draft process came from Boise when I was out there. And when you go to Boise, if you go to Boise, and you should go to Boise because I think it's a super underrated city, go eat at Barbacoa. Place is a legendary restaurant in Boise. It's awesome. Trust me, you're gonna leave with a gut. You're just gonna feel so full. Like Margot, my fiance now, she came and visited us in Boise during one of the weeks, and we took a picture outside of Barbacoa after, and my buddy Colton goes, "David, like suck in." Like after that meal, I'd gained like 20 pounds. Place is amazing. And then the other thing you have to do when you're in Boise, you have to go up to Bogus Basin. It's a ski resort that's like 45 minutes above town, and they have night skiing, and there was nobody there on a weekday. So I would work, I'd write articles about the 49ers on weekdays, and then we'd pack up at 5 p.m. We'd be up on the mountain at 6, and we'd ski to like 10, just in the darkness, but obviously they have lights. But, you could see the stars. There were a lot of people that, some of the snowboarders, they got a little tired toward the end of the night, and they just got up, halfway down the hill, laid down, looked up at the stars, and then you're 45 minutes away from town, and you could go eat at Barbacoa when you get back. Anyway, Boise, underrated city. Had to give it a shout out because it's been the home of some of my best 49ers coverage over the course of the past 2 years or so. Cyrus Habibi Likio went to Boise State, rivals with Fresno State, I know. They play on that blue field over there. He's a bigger 220-pound back, but he's slower. And he's from Palo Alto, so he's from the Bay Area, was at the 49ers local pro day, ran a 4.740. So at 220 pounds, I guess that's acceptable because he's a little bit bigger, but it's going to be a real uphill battle. Thing is, though, by week 10, it seems the 49ers are always down to one running back. Last year, they ran out of bodies at running back, and they had to put Deebo Samuel there. I'm not saying that Habibi Lekio is going to be Deebo Samuel, but Austin Walter got game action for the 49ers a couple of years ago. And basically anybody who's in the building at the start of the year who learns the system, even if they're cut, even if they don't make the practice squad, they may be called upon a little bit later in the year after all this injury attrition happens. So it's a name that you shouldn't forget, Cyrus Habibi Lekio. All right, on to Donovan West, who received the largest signing bonus of most guaranteed money, I guess I should say, of any 49ers center, 100,000 of any 49ers UDFA this season. $100,000 for Donovan West. He's a good zone scheme center. He may need to add some weight for the NFL, and I made a video about him earlier today, but why don't we watch the video one more time? This is Donovan West, number 61, just tossing aside a defender there on the first play of his tape. You could tell he's an aggressive run blocker. He can get out into space. He may need to add some weight. He was about 296. I know centers don't have to be quite as big because they're not handling the meat of the three techniques as much as guards are, but I think play strength always has to improve, and Donovan West will get stronger. He turns 21 years old on May 19th. That's in less than 3 weeks. But here you could see that he's out in front of the play again, right there. Boom, lays the block. Second replay of that, right there on the left side. You'll see him right there. There's the block from Donovan West. And then just some good assistance blocking. Centers have to be smart. They need to know where the blitz is coming from. And that was some good help from Donovan West. So there's a good chance that Donovan West makes this football team if Alex Mack retires. And we don't know if Alex Mack will retire yet. So be sure to stay tuned on that front and subscribe to the channel, like the channel, go check out the video that I dedicated on Donovan West. Why should you watch that video? Well, because Jason Poe is in that video. And Jason Poe is the 300-pounder out of Mercer who could play center. His arms might be a little bit short, though, for NFL center position, but the guy brands himself as a fullback as well. And that could be kind of fun, right? Kyle Shanahan putting a 300-pound fullback in there. I have the Jason Poe video up in my other one, so go and check that out. It's here on the channel. Hopefully you're enjoying the content. All right, those are the 49ers 2022 undrafted free agents. Maybe I'll take a couple questions here before we get going. Everybody, as always, tell your friends about the channel. Let's get this thing growing. We're nearing, we were just at 13K the other day. We're now creeping toward 14K. It's been fun this weekend with, I think, a lot of enthusiasm reignited throughout the football fan world with the NFL draft. I can't tell you. It's not breaking news until it's news. I just got a little bit of an update, and it'll come out in due time. Everybody subscribe. Thank you. Good. Somebody checking in from Boise. Barbacoa is awesome. Jacquez Patrick. All right. Any questions about the UDFAs? Those are the ones I'm going to answer here. If I'm feeling energetic, and I don't think I will be feeling energetic enough. I've already made so many videos. I don't like to cram a bunch of videos down your throats, but stay tuned for the big depth chart video, the roster cut down video coming tomorrow to go along with my article from The Athletic. That's going to be a big one. Atkins, under the radar, out of Fresno State. This is a good point. Lots of veteran free agent tight ends are available. They will sign one or two. I predicted that in the depth chart that comes out tomorrow because it's a little thin there. But in the meantime, Garrett Walston has a little bit of a window. Can Jason Poe play fullback? I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, we have to talk to Shanahan about it. We have to see what the 49ers are doing. But I think that Shanahan, he might have something up his sleeve. Poe is quick. 4'9", 40 at 300 pounds. I mean, that's impressive. So, again, other video talks more about Jason Poe. And I get the hype. And a lot of people saw my video or, my comment on his video that I retweeted yesterday. And, I love when football gets innovative, and I sure think the defensive backs would cower in fear if Jason Poe was running full speed at them with the football. If you were to bet how many UDFAs make the week 1 roster versus UDFAs that ended up playing this year, I'll answer the first part of that question because I don't answer the second part of I don't understand the second part of the question. Probably only 1 or 2 make the roster. There's a chance the 0 make it. There's a reason why these guys weren't drafted. And I think I went through the weaknesses of some of these players, but it's tough to make a roster, especially one as stacked as the 49ers. So we shouldn't look at it in terms of, will they make the roster or not? We should look at it in terms of, can this player turn into a developmental piece in the long run through the practice squad for the 49ers, like Gemmell, Jeremiah Gemmell, linebacker, or Olubi, the other linebacker who runs the 4-4. All right, good stuff, guys. I am going to go. It's Sunday night. Hopefully you enjoyed the UDFA breakdown. I certainly enjoyed giving it. Subscribe to the channel, like the channel. We'll have more stuff this weekend. Phase 2 of the 49ers offseason starts tomorrow. I wonder what the chances that Deebo Samuel is going to be present are. I don't know. We'll see. Everybody take care. Thanks again for all the support.